You know what I can't stop thinking about? Milk. Not like, oh wow, milk is healthy. No. I mean, the first guy. The first guy. Because at some point in human history, everyone was just walking around, hunting animals, eating berries, trying not to get folded by a wolf. And then one dude looked at a cow and went, And that changed human civilization forever. Because let's be honest, milk is normal now because we grew up with it. You open the fridge, there's milk. You eat cereal, milk. You drink coffee, milk. You make cake, milk. But if you erase all modern context and look at it like an alien for 1 second, it is deeply insane. Some ancient human saw a giant grass-eating animal with horns, hooves, and the emotional intelligence of a confused chair, and somehow thought, yeah, I'm going to drink whatever comes out of that. Bro, who approved this? Was there a meeting? Did the tribe vote? Was one guy like, guys, hear me out? And everyone else was like, absolutely not, Kevin. Because from the outside, it looks like one of the weirdest decisions humans ever made. But here's the annoying part. That weird decision might have been genius. Because ancient humans didn't start drinking cow milk because they were bored and weird. Well, maybe a little weird. But mostly, they did it because life was brutal, food was unpredictable, and milk was basically a cheat code. A disgusting looking cheat code at first, but still a cheat code. So today we're answering one of the most important questions in human history. Who looked at a cow and decided, yeah, I'm drinking that? And why did everyone else eventually copy him? First, we have to understand something. Ancient humans were not chilling. They were not waking up at 10 a.m., scrolling TikTok, and complaining that the Wi-Fi was slow. Their life was more like, good morning, you may starve today. That was the vibe. Food was seasonal. Animals moved, crops failed, winter existed, and if your entire food plan was hopefully we find something, then congratulations, you were one bad week away from becoming a skeleton with opinions. So when humans started domesticating animals like goats, sheep, and cattle, it wasn't because they wanted cute farm content, it was survival. At first, animals were basically walking meat storage. Instead of chasing wild animals every day like an idiot, humans thought, what if the food just stood near our house? Amazing innovation. 10 out of 10. But then someone noticed something. These animals didn't just provide meat, they also produced milk. And milk was weirdly useful. It had calories, it had fat, it had protein, it had water. It came back every day. And the best part? You didn't have to kill the animal to get it. That's huge. Because meat is a one-time purchase. You kill the cow, boom, dinner, but then the cow's gone. Milk is like the cow paying rent. Every day the cow's like, here's your subscription protein. And ancient humans who were constantly fighting starvation probably looked at that and thought, okay, this is suspicious, but I am hungry enough to investigate. Now this is where people imagine the first milk drinker just walking up to a cow and drinking straight from the source like some kind of prehistoric menace. And honestly, that image is hilarious, but it probably wasn't exactly like that. More likely, humans were already keeping animals around. They saw baby animals drinking milk. They understood that milk was food for calves and kids, and then eventually, some desperate genius probably thought, wait a minute, if the tiny cow can drink it, why can't I? And that's where the problem started. Because there was one tiny issue. Ancient adult humans were mostly lactose intolerant, which means the first people drinking milk were not casually sipping a latte and feeling elegant. No, their stomachs were probably holding emergency meetings. Because lactose is the sugar in milk, and babies can digest it. Because babies are supposed to drink milk. But adults? Most adult mammals lose the ability to digest lactose after childhood, which is a fancy scientific way of saying the first adult milk drinkers probably had a very bad afternoon. Imagine being the first guy to try cow milk. He drinks it. Everyone watches. He's like, guys, I think this is the future. 3 hours later, he's behind a bush fighting for his life. And the tribe is like, so future canceled? But humans are stubborn. That is basically our species. A normal animal eats something bad and says, never again. Humans eat something bad and say, what if we change the recipe? That's how we got cheese. That's how we got yogurt. That's how we got bread. That's how we got half the food aisle. Humans looked at milk, realized it caused stomach chaos, and instead of quitting, they went, what if we let it rot? But professionally. And that's the real breakthrough. Fermented dairy, yogurt, cheese, kefir, butter. These foods are not just random food inventions. They are ancient hacks. When milk ferments, bacteria break down some of the lactose. So even if your body couldn't handle raw milk, you might handle yogurt or cheese way better. Basically, humans found a way to nerf milk. Raw milk was the final boss. Cheese was the easier mode. And suddenly, dairy became way more useful because cheese lasts longer than milk. Yogurt lasts longer than milk. Butter is concentrated fat. And in a world without refrigerators, that mattered a lot. You couldn't just put milk in the fridge and be like, I'll finish it next week. Your fridge was a hole, a clay pot, and vibes. So turning milk into longer lasting food was huge. It meant humans could store nutrition, carry it, trade it, survive winter, feed children, feed adults, and keep getting value from animals without slaughtering them every time someone got hungry. That's when milk stopped being the weird cow liquid and started becoming one of humanity's greatest survival tools. But there's another crazy part. Milk didn't just change culture, it changed our bodies. Because in some human populations, adults slowly evolved the ability to digest lactose. This is called lactase persistence. Basically, some people had a genetic mutation that allowed them to keep digesting milk as adults. And in communities where dairy was important, that mutation became extremely useful because imagine two ancient people during a famine. One person drinks milk and gets calories. The other person drinks milk and immediately regrets being born. Who has the advantage? Exactly. Over generations in some places, the milk-drinking genes spread. Not everywhere. A lot of the world still has high lactose intolerance today because dairy wasn't equally important in every region. But in some populations, especially where herding animals became a big part of life, being able to drink milk as an adult was a real survival advantage. So the funniest part is this. Humans didn't start drinking milk because we were perfectly designed for it. We started drinking milk before we were ready. Then evolution had to catch up like, wait, you people are actually doing this? Humans are the only species that would force evolution to update the software because we refused to stop eating suspicious cow juice. And honestly, respect. Now why cows? Why not just goats or sheep? Actually, early humans probably used milk from goats, sheep, and cattle depending on the region. Goats and sheep were smaller and easier to manage. Cows were bigger and more dangerous, but they also produced a lot more milk. A cow is basically a giant four-legged dairy machine that can turn grass. Humans cannot eat into food humans can eat. That is insane. Grass is useless to us. You can stare at grass all day. You cannot digest it properly. But cows can. They eat grass, process it with their ridiculous stomach system, and produce milk. So ancient humans basically found a way to turn fields of grass into human food. That's not weird. That's genius. That's like looking at a lawn and saying, I'm going to convert this into cheese. That is civilization-level thinking. And once humans figured that out, dairy became powerful. It gave people a renewable food source. It helped herding communities survive in places where farming was hard. It gave children extra nutrition. It created foods that lasted longer, and it became part of culture, trade, and identity. So when we joke about the first person who drank milk, yeah, it's funny. Because the first moment must have looked insane. One guy standing next to a cow, everyone judging him, the cow judging him harder, and then him saying, trust me, this is going to be huge. But he wasn't completely crazy. He was probably hungry, or desperate, or curious, or watching baby animals and connecting the dots. And that's kind of how humans work. We survive by being curious idiots. Fire probably looked dangerous. We used it anyway. Fermented fruit probably smelled weird. We drank it anyway. Moldy milk? We turned it into cheese. A cow? We turned it into breakfast. Human history is basically just a long list of someone doing something questionable and then everyone else finding out it was useful. So the real answer is, the first milk drinkers were not just freaks. They were survival hackers. They discovered that animals could give food without dying. They learned how to make dairy easier to digest. They turned milk into cheese, yogurt, and butter. And eventually, in some groups, our genes changed because dairy became that important. So yes, from a modern perspective, it sounds ridiculous. Some ancient guy really did look at a cow and start one of the most awkward food traditions ever. But from his perspective, he didn't see a weird drink. He saw calories. He saw survival. He saw food that came back tomorrow. And maybe, just maybe, he saw the future. A future where thousands of years later, humans would pour cow milk over tiny sugar squares and call it breakfast, which honestly might be even weirder. Because at least the ancient guy had an excuse. He was trying not to starve. What's our excuse?